Time we'll definitely go ahead and get started. As people continue to hop on, we'll definitely just let them. So first, I just want to say thank you all for tuning in. I know there's so much going on, but thank you for making the time to join us for our first of many, which will be our Represented series, which is really about featuring various financial professionals in different disciplines across finance, sharing their stories, and then also sharing a bit about their specific knowledge and skill set and what they are really passionate about in the industry. My name is Dana Wilson, and I am the CEO and founder of CHIP, which stands for Changing How Individuals Prosper. And CHIP is really a platform connecting individuals to financial professionals of color, Black and Latinx to be specific. And we're really excited to bring about this series because it's something that's near and dear to our hearts at CHIP, and really want to make sure that we're highlighting and featuring people that we respect and understand are doing great things in the industry. So with all of that, I want to introduce to you all our first speaker of our series, Antoine Burrell, who is a Senior Associate Business Development at Wealth Advisors Trust Company. At Wealth Advisors Trust Company, he focuses on developing new sales and marketing strategies to further increase business development opportunities through creativity and adaptability. Anton has helped create new processes to build strong collaborative relationships with advisors using Wealth Advisors Trust Company. Wealth Advisors Trust Company is a corporate trustee created by advisors out of the frustration with the corporate trustee industry. Anton is a Dallas, Texas native and graduated from Harding University with a degree in finance. His drive for performance rests on the passion of giving everyone control and choice when using any type of trustee. He will complete his MBA with a concentration in trust fund management this fall. His previous experience includes healthcare finance, accounting, and insurance. So welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited to be on board. I'm excited for everything that CHIP is doing, and I'm excited to share about my experiences in the trust world. So thanks.
Yes. Yeah, of course. We're super excited to have you. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that we ask our first question out of our Represented series, because that's what we're here to do, as well as share our knowledge. But we definitely want to hear about your experience within the financial industry, kind of the different paths that you had to navigate as a person of color, and then kind of tell us more about your company, and then we can move on to what you're sharing with us today.
Sure. Well, one thing that I've had to work on, or one challenge, the biggest challenge is getting into the door or being a part of the conversation, and being able to talk to the right people to get you into the right positions. And so from my experiences, it was basically focusing on building a different color of networks. You have, when it comes to race, especially African American, and being able to understand that you need to build a big network, whether that's with any other type of race out there. So that was just one of my big focuses in understanding that, my industry is not very diverse in the trust world. It's getting to that point, but it's not there yet. So pretty much every conference I go to, every meeting I attend, usually I'm the one African American person, or one of two. There's not many of us in the conversations, in the rooms, in the conferences. So that puts kind of a target on your back, because you're a representative, and to understand that you have to do everything right, almost, and that you can't pretty much make any mistakes, which is both good and bad, because it's challenging knowing that you kind of have to hold yourself up to higher standards, but also understand that you're being looked at and you're held up to a higher standard. So that's both good and bad, and navigating through this world. But in my experiences, it's been really great to be a part of just a different type of diverse community. Being in the trust world is not extremely diverse, but just being able to learn people's experiences and learn how differently people think, especially around the ultra net worth having conversations with people of the ultra net worth, of the 1%, and just understanding their whole philosophy on wealth, their whole philosophy on diversity, their whole philosophy on economical standards and things of that sort, really opens up your eyes. And it's just really great opportunity that I've allowed to be in. So I'm happy for that.
That's great. I can imagine there's a lot of experience and a lot of things that you've come across just kind of being in that environment with ultra high net worth individuals and really understanding their terminology when it comes to wealth and what their meaning is. That's really interesting there. So I will pass it over to you and let you get started in sharing a lot of what you'll be talking about today when it comes to trust.
Perfect.
So, and for those of you who are on your computers, you can definitely should be able to see the PowerPoint here.
So this is a wonderful PowerPoint presentation. It's pretty short due to the amount of time that we have. Again, thanks again for having me on here. But so a lot of things that I'm going to cover is from a trustee's perspective. And from the trust officer's perspective, and what we look at when we work with financial advisors, CPAs, attorneys, and kind of just the whole makeup and the philosophy of the client. So when we're looking at this first slide, it's kind of the whole philosophy of the client, understanding that the client has, the financial advisor, they have the banker, their estate planning attorney, the trust officer, and the CPA. And as a trustee, we understand that we have a very small role in the whole philosophy of the plan. And so just a little background on our trust company. Danny, you highlighted that we were a trust company that was created out of frustration with dealing with corporate trustees. And that was established 10 years ago when one of our co-founders inherited some money, and him and his team at Ernst & Young, he needed to find a trustee, and they were not happy with the options that they had out there. So lo and behold, Wealth Advisors Trust Company was, bred from that, from the frustrations of the corporate trustee industry and how it's been very stagnant over the last, 200 years. And so our focus is on being extremely innovative and collaborative with both the client and their financial advisors. So at Wealth Advisors Trust Company, we are known as an advisor-friendly trust company. It's a new term, and I think the understanding of it is pretty new. But basically, what that means is that we only handle one aspect of the trust administration. So we just do the trust administration, the trust accounting, and we don't do any of the investment management. We actually delegate that, or based on if it's a delegated or directed trust, that responsibility out to the financial advisor. So that is just one of the basically benefits of the location that we are in. So, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But basically, this is just understanding that the client has a lot of different people that they utilize, and understanding that we have a very small role, and to understand our role and how we can work collaboratively with everyone else involved with the client. So we can move on to the next slide. I can kind of tell you a little bit more about, where we're located and as to why. So this is just a trust comparison, basically a trust states comparison chart that shows the top 5 trust jurisdictions in the United States of America. So you have Alaska, you have Delaware, Nevada, South Dakota, and Wyoming. I mean, if you look across the board, all these top trust states pretty much have the same trust law. There are a lot of very nitpicky differences, but if you have a client that has a trust in any one of these states, they have tons of benefits. And also, if you're able to have a client, say in New York or in Texas, that wants to have the benefits of these types of trust law, then using a trust state like South Dakota or Delaware is a great option. Unfortunately, though, it can be kind of discerning for attorneys because they don't understand another state's trust law. So because they might know a little bit about it, but they don't know enough to confidently tell their client to go ahead and go along with another trust state. But it does offer a lot of benefits for clients. For instance, you see it's South Dakota. Obviously, it's highlighted and it's blue, and that is where we are located. And you can see all the benefits that South Dakota does offer. For one, it talks with the directed trust. So I kind of spoke a little bit about the delegated versus a directed trust. So to break that down, a directed trust is a trust in which the family or grantor beneficiaries or the grantor can direct the investment duties or the duties inside the trust document. So that way a financial advisor or a trustee is named directly in the trust document. So if the financial advisor is named directly in the trust document, then a trustee has less risk because now the grantor is in control of who made that or who's making the investment duties, and therefore because the trustee has lower risk, a directed trust has lower trust fees. So that's just one also benefit that clients can get from a directed trust. Also the fact that a directed and a delegated trust is pretty much the opposite, in that a grantor delegates or names the trustee inside the in the trust document, and then the trustee has the authority and the ability to delegate those investment duties to a financial advisor. So that is typically about 15 more basis points when it comes to the trustee fee, but that's just because the risk of the trustee is higher because we are now delegating those duties out to another fiduciary. So South Dakota is also a top state for their decanting statutes. And basically decanting there's two ways to adjust the trust. So for instance, if a client is looking to have the benefits of South Dakota, but maybe the trust language doesn't dictate that they can do that, then decanting and a non-judicial settlement agreement are ways that we can maybe get around this. It just kind of depends on what's the language in the trust document. And basically decanting is being able to make changes to the trust document or completely redo the trust document. Those are just some of the great benefits. Another one of the great benefits of South Dakota. Also, privacy laws. So for instance, if a client has a senator or a grantor has a beneficiary that they don't want, or they're going to gift, the trust assets to the beneficiary, and the beneficiary is, 2021, and they don't want the beneficiary to understand that they have a trust that they'll receive, and that way the beneficiary, is a trust fund baby, and they're not going to live up to life standards because who cares? I'm receiving $10 million. Why even try? So it's a way for because the trust doesn't have to be filed in the courts of South Dakota, that those private laws are implied, and so that the trust can kind of be hidden for a while until for instance, like the trust can not, or the beneficiary won't know about the trust until they're age 30, and then they'll be able to receive the trust funds. So that's just another benefit. And then the dynastic trust. So South Dakota does not have or repeal the rule against perpetuities. So trust in South Dakota can last forever. So you can have a dynastic trust that goes on forever, as opposed to some states that are very limited. Delaware Delaware is limited for a certain amount of time. Other states, they follow the rules against perpetuities, so on and so forth. Also, no state income tax in South Dakota. So that is another huge benefit, especially on distributions from the trust. So if you're in states like California or New York, you're getting huge penalties when it comes to income tax that you have to pay on the distributions of the trust. So South Dakota is just a tax safe hold for that. And then also the community property trust of South Dakota. And then another big benefit are the asset protection trust. So as you can see from this list, there's a lot of huge benefits that go along with just being able to use a outside jurisdiction than the state that you're familiar with. So when I talked about a trust, a lot of people don't actually understand what a trust company is or what a trustee is. And a trustee to make it plain and simple, there's a grantor, there's a beneficiary of a trust, and there's a trustee. The trustee is the manager of the assets. They have ultimate control over the trust. And so that's why it's very important when understanding the type of trustee you want to pick. And there's many different types of trustees, for instance, but this slide kind of just shows you basically a trust company or a corporate trustee. And a lot of people don't know that there's, actually 3 different types of trust companies that you can use. You can use for a trustee, you can use a traditional, you can use a independent trustee, you can use a bank, or you can use an individual, which can basically be a family or friend that you just want to be able to manage the trust assets. So this slide kind of shows you basically the 3 different types of trustees or types of trust companies. And what you see is that in the blue, you have a trust company that does what we do. Basically, they just control the distributions, the administration, and the accounting, and the client controls all the investments. And then also in the green, you have the administrative trust company, which only controls the administration, the accounting, and then the client controls all the distributions and all the investments inside the trust. And then last but not least, you have the traditional trust company, which controls the distributions, the administrations, the accounting, the investments, and then the client has 0 control. So this is in basically a bank trust department, where the investment management is all done in-house, administration is all done in-house. Basically, if you work with a big bank such as JP Morgan or Bank of America or Goldman Sachs, any of those trust companies, are going to do everything in-house. And so if you're a client and you want to be able to use, a corporate trustee to just do the trust administration and the trust accounting, and then you also want to use, your financial advisor that you've had for your entire life, then if you use a bank trust company, you're not going to be able to have that opportunity, because they're going to do everything in-house, and they're going to take those assets and they're going to give them to the financial advisors of their firm. So that's just kind of a broad overview of clients and advisors being able to understand that depending on the type of trust company that you choose, you can either keep or lose control. So we can go on to the next slide. So this slide kind of just talks a little bit about how to pick a trustee. So this is very important that I talked about earlier. If you choose a bank trust company, you won't be able to use your advisor. You choose an individual trust company, they might not charge a fee that a corporate trustee charges, but they could, they might show favoritism to a beneficiary. And although that's not a fiduciary, they're not acting as a fiduciary, they still might do that. And there have been cases when those discriminatory actions actually do happen. So this is just kind of like a breakdown of, how to pick a trustee. I wrote a couple articles on basically just a few considerations to go over on how to pick a trustee, and just some considerations to think about when you're choosing a trustee. So the first one is, you want to decide if it's an individual or a trust company. Like I said, do you want to have a family friend that's serving as a trustee and managing your trust assets, or do you want to have a corporate stronghold fiduciary that's going to be managing your trust assets? And with that, you have both risk and reward. You have both pros and cons with using both of those. And I would go over the specifics of it, but just thinking about time, that's just 2 things that you have to think about. Do you want to have an individual, or do you want to have that corporate structure? And then we go into, like I said, what type of trust company do you want to use? So there's 3 different types of trust companies, but the 2 mains are, do you want to have an advisor-friendly trust company, the one that you can, delegate it to a financial advisor, or do you want to have a bank? There's both pros and cons to both of them. So, an advisor or a bank is going to offer executor services. They're going to do the administrative, they're going to do the accounting, and they're going to do the investment management. An advisor-friendly trust company, they're not going to do the executor services. They're not going to serve as an executor over the trust, but they will do all the trust administration and the trust accounting, and give you the flexibility to be able to direct or delegate those investment duties out to your financial advisor. And also I talked about the importance of governing law. So when you're looking at picking a trustee, you want to see if they're in one of those top states that I talked about earlier. Because if they're not, it's basically like having a Ferrari. Or you bought a Ferrari and being able to drive it at 150 miles an hour in the US versus in Germany. So if you have a Ferrari and you drive it at 150 miles an hour in the US, you're going to get a ticket, you're probably going to go to prison, and a whole lot of legal problems are going to happen from that. But if you take it to Germany, you have way more flexibility. You can, gas that thing out. You can go crazy in it. And that's just a little piece of like the advantages of using basically your state versus a top trust state jurisdiction. If you don't use a top trust state jurisdiction, you can basically be shooting yourself in your foot. But that's completely understandable. Just know that you have the option. The options are out there for that. Another thing to consider when choosing a trustee is, does the trustee invest the trust assets? So if the trustee does invest the trust assets, like I said earlier, remember that you're not going to they're going to do those investments in-house, and you're not going to have control over who you would actually want to do the investment of the trust assets. That's just a very, very important thing to consider. And also to consider continuity of the trust company and understand the DNA that the trust company was created. Understand the DNA of the trustee. Why were they created? So I talked a little bit earlier about why Wealth Advisors Trust Company was created. It was basically solely due to frustration. So because we were solely created because of frustration, our focus is on creating new innovative ways to benefit clients, benefit advisors, benefit our industry. And that's our focus. We also are able to, trust companies like us are able to think like the client. We're able to be flexible. We're able to be creative and adaptive. That's just one really important thing to be considering, especially when you're picking someone that's going to be, watching over the livelihood of your entire family. And the second to last thing is understanding that, you can get the best of both worlds. So we and other trust companies can serve as a co-trustee, which means that you could have a individual or family member who serves at strictly on administrative or strictly on the accounting of the trust or just the investments, and then also have a corporate structure behind them that basically supports them on anything that they're unable to do, such as the trust administration, the trust accounting. Serving as a co-trustee offers, clients another flexible option to be able to have that family friend that they trust, and then also have a corporate structure behind that. So that's also a really, really, really cool or a really important fact to consider when you're choosing a trustee. And then last is to understand the fees of the trust company. So understand what it is that you are actually what are you actually being charging for when a corporate trustee is administrating your trust? What are they nickeling and diming you? Are they only charging you for, some specifics? Are they charging you based on an AUM scale? Like how are they charging their fees? We charge our fees a little bit differently. We use a 7-factor pricing model, which basically just these 7 factors indicate, how much risk and time we're going to have. So the more risk we have, obviously the fee is going to go up higher. How much time we have to spend on the trust, obviously the fees are going to increase. But if there's a way to reduce the risk, if there's a way to reduce the fee, such as if the trust is directed versus delegated, like I said, with a directed trust, there's less risk for the trustee. With a delegated trust, there's more risk for the trustee. So therefore, our fees will fluctuate based on our risk and time. So that just offers clients more transparency when it comes to the trustee fee and having a full understanding of what they're actually paying for. So that is just a little bit of my quick thoughts on how to pick a trustee. And if we want to go ahead and move on to the last slide. This just breaks it down a little bit more of what it would be like to work with someone like us, like an advisor-friendly trust company. Sorry, an advisor-friendly trust company, and just understanding that, hey, we control, or what the trust client controls, what the trust officer's duties are, the financial advisor's duties are, and how we work collaboratively, excuse me, together to better assist the client.
Awesome. Thank you. That was some really great information, and I really appreciate that you sharing that. I do have a question, and we'll also open it up for questions in a second. How difficult is it for someone to possibly move a trust if they had a trust already at a larger firm and they're thinking about, well, what are my options now if they've discovered kind of an outside trust company that they want to use, and how difficult is that process for them?
So the process, it kind of depends on the situation. The good thing for a financial advisor is to understand that you are able to increase your AUM as a financial advisor by knowing that you can use an outside fiduciary, a trust company that is, advisor friendly, a trust company that is in another top jurisdiction. And that way you can take assets away. If you have a client who has a, $10 million trust at, JP Morgan Chase, and you're not managing those trust assets, knowing that if you work with a trust company that's advisor friendly, that you're able to move those assets away. But the whole transferring of a trust process is actually, it can happen very quickly. It just kind of depends on the trust language and what has happened. And if the current trustee is, going to put up a fight to relinquish those trust assets. So another important factor, and I'm glad you asked that question, is because in trust documents, there's specific language pertaining to the removal and appointment of trustees. In all trust documents, they have this type of language, or they should have this type of language. That depending on if the trust is older, it's probably not going to have this type of language, and that can make it a lot difficult. But that's when we can utilize, being able to use decanting statutes and looking at the state has a non-judicial settlement agreement, and be able to try to navigate our ways through that. But so that's one thing that we look at for that.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for answering that. And we'll definitely open it up now for any other questions and take the last couple minutes of the presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free to just raise your hand and I'll turn the button on that will allow you to chat and ask your question live. So we'll give another 3 minutes or so and let people get their questions in if there's any.
Sure.
All right, we've got a couple questions coming in. So I'll just kind of go in order and how they popped up. All right, Taryn, you can go ahead and ask your question.
This is not so much of a question, really.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I had that on you. Technology.
Oh, okay. Dealing with it all the time. Mine is not so much of a question, but I wanted him just to.
Oh, it looks like you broke up a little bit there.
A little bit. Taryn, did we lose you?
So I think that may be something that he may want to touch on.
Oh, sorry, Taryn.
Can you repeat it a little bit? You went out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I was saying that sometimes people put people into as a trustee, and they've never really asked them if they wanted that position, not knowing the work that goes into it. And I just wanted to say maybe you should touch on that, because sometimes people just put those people into positions saying, well, listen, it's a family member, it's a great friend, but they've actually never spoken to them, and they're put into a position where now they don't really want to deal with that. But it's something maybe you can speak on. Sure.
So one, thanks for asking that question. And two, I understand that pain. We deal with a lot of individual trustees that do not understand, the responsibility that goes along with being a trustee. Just for one small example is understanding that, trust law changes, yearly and monthly often sometimes. And to be able to keep up with those kind of changes, is a ton of responsibility. And especially when it comes to, accounting standards or tax standards, new tax laws that have been passed. And so that can put an individual trustee or someone that did not know they were going to serve as trustee under a whole umbrella of risk that they were not prepared to, take on. And so my advice would be just to be able to, if you're naming an individual as a trustee, to have the conversation with them about what their responsibility was going to be if you know their responsibility. And also to look at, having best of both worlds. Earlier I mentioned having the individual trustee and also the co-trustee. That ability to be able to have, your family or friend be able to serve as trustee because you trust them, you love them, but also to be able to have that corporate side, that corporate support. And so that individual trustee doesn't feel like they're serving it alone.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron, for your question. I'm going to get some more questions in here. All right. We have another question from Ron. And I'm going to unmute you, Ron. You can go ahead and ask your question. Oh. Oh, Ron, you can go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I was just asking, do you still think financial advisors really need, African-American financial advisors really need to promote the use of trust with our people? I've noticed over the years that I find that so many of our people do not know what a trust is. So they fail to even go to the extent other than a simple will when they have minor children, when they have real estate properties, scattered around and assets that really need to be distributed. And to the extent of the testamentary trust, just a simple testamentary trust for minor children, because we all know what happens at age 18 or majority, age in most states, what happens, So I just wanted to get your input on what you find.
So, Ron, thanks for asking that question. And to answer your question straight up front, absolutely. Every advisor should be a part of their practice to be able to ask those key questions to focus on the family wealth, because that's what clients want. Clients want, from a study that I read about from Vanguard, is that clients now are only willing to pay about 20 to 30 basis points for investment advice alone. So as an advisor, how do you add more value to that client? Well, that's looking at things, like PNC, that's looking at things like life insurance, and especially looking at estate planning and trust, and understanding, what they want to have happen, and understanding if that, is actually a good option for them. Because sometimes having a trust might not be a good option because it might not be tax efficient. But also understanding that you need to have to be able to ask those questions, those hard questions, to pull that out of the clients. And that's what, financial advisors are really good at, is asking really tough questions. So being able to make those questions catered specifically to estate planning, to trust planning, and there's a big shift that's going to start happening now with revocable trust planning, with the financial advisors and attorneys working together to get those done. So absolutely have those conversations and make it a key point of the conversation to ask about estate planning. And lastly, also ask about, your client's parents. Do your client's parents have the type of trust or type of estate planning, documents ready in order to, have that specific conversation with them as well.
Thank you.
It's a really good point. Thanks, Ron, for your question. We have another question in here as well. All right, Kevin. Kevin, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. I just was curious, Antoine, if you can discuss a little bit how Wealth Advisor maybe works with family offices. I've seen a lot more individuals setting up ways to leave assets for the beneficiaries in a family office type of structure, or as they continue to accumulate wealth? I guess, how do you guys work with clients from that perspective?
Sure. So to get your question right, are you asking how we work with family office for, I'm thinking either a business or for a financial advisory firm. So I just kind of clear that up.
Maybe more as a financial advisory firm.
Sure. So, I mean, our firm works with anyone. We work specifically with financial advisors, financial advisory firms. And if advisory firms, oftentimes will have us come in and, speak with their clients, or just be able to send them information that they can have discussions with their clients about, wealth planning, or, how to bring in, increase the whole AUM of the firm by creating new clients. So we work with family offices. We'll work with family offices all day and Sunday. That's a key focus on us, because we focus on our business model is 80% of our clients are financial advisors, because financial advisors understand that, they can use a corporate trustee now as an ally. And so that's where that's 80% of our business comes from, is from financial advisors needing a corporate trustee that's not going to take assets away from them. Is just going to be able to give them the support that they need to help their clients, and also to manage the trust assets.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for your question, Kevin. All right, I think that's all the questions, unless anyone has one they want to get in. I don't see any more hands raised. So I think that's it. I think we grabbed all the questions. So again, just want to say thank you to everyone who attended, and definitely a strong thank you. I don't have like some clapping hands around me to give you a big applause, but we definitely appreciate you coming on board and sharing your knowledge and parts of your journey around being a financial professional of color, and really the passion and drive that you have for the specific trust, and which we all know is extremely important, and ever so more important, especially to Ron's point, within our community. So we definitely want to make sure we're having more of those conversations. And please let people know how they can find out more about you or get in touch with you if they have further questions.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Dana, thanks again for having me on here. I love everything that Chip is doing. I told you about that earlier when we had our first conversations. I love, Chip's focus. I love what the future is holding for Chip, and also advisors of color, and just our financial professionals of color. And just thanks for what you're doing. And so I'm just glad to be part of the journey. So if anyone wants to learn more, you can log on to www.wealthadvisorstrust.com, and we do blogs. We consider ourselves the Google of the trust industry, because we are constantly pushing out free content that will help you to have conversations with your clients, help you to have conversations with your family around everything, obviously around trust and estates. But just go to wealthadvisorstrust.com, and if you want to, give me a call and just have any more questions, or want to learn about trust, or if you have a trust and you're looking at making a change, or anything of that sort, you can give me a call at 605-743-8240. Love to chat. And so thanks again.
Yes, thank you. And thanks again for everyone that attended, and we'll make sure that we send this out again for those that unfortunately missed out on this wonderful live recording of the taping. But thank you again. Have a wonderful day. Continue to stay safe. Bye.
Bye, guys.